Hey, Silent Pages fam. We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe. Now stay with us. The story begins. Alexandra Morris stood in the center of the sprawling Monarch and Company design studio, sunlight streaming through the tall glass windows, casting long, angular shadows across the polished wooden floors. The scent of fresh fabrics, sharp metallic threads, and strong coffee mingled in the air, creating a sensory cocktail that made her chest tighten with excitement. Today marked her first week at one of London's most prestigious fashion houses, a world she had dreamed of since sketching dresses in the corners of her childhood notebooks. And yet, even as she adjusted a silk swatch against a mannequin, a twinge of nervous anticipation pulsed through her. Her fingers traced the contours of a flowing evening gown sketch, imagining the fabric cascading down the runway. Every stitch, every drape, every shimmer mattered. This was more than clothing. It was storytelling, and she wanted her voice heard in the symphony of London Fashion Week. The soft hum of the studio's air conditioning was suddenly interrupted by a deliberate, confident step. Alexandra looked up to see Jack Randall entering the room. Tall, with dark, almost obsidian hair brushing his collar, and piercing gray eyes that seemed to measure both the room and everyone in it. He carried an aura of authority impossible to ignore. Despite the crisp lines of his tailored suit, there was an energy about him, restless, exacting, uncompromising, that made Alexandra straighten instinctively. "Morning, Alexandra," Jack said, his voice smooth but edged with a sharpness that made her sit up a little straighter. He surveyed her sketches with an intensity that could have been intimidating, yet carried the faintest trace of curiosity, almost as if he were trying to decode her mind. "These are promising," he added after a pause. "But promise alone doesn't win shows. Execution does." Alexandra swallowed. "Thank you, sir. I've been refining the cuts and testing fabric combinations. I want this first collection to be strong, cohesive, memorable." Jack raised an eyebrow, a small smirk appearing as he approached a mood board filled with velvet swatches, shimmering metallic threads, and sketches of daring silhouettes. "Ambition is admirable," he said, tilting his head slightly. "But ambition without direction is chaos. Every piece you create must tell its own story, but also belong to the greater narrative. Cohesion, elegance, surprise." She nodded, scribbling notes in her pad as she tried to absorb every word. "I understand. I'll make sure the theme is consistent across the collection." He stepped closer, eyeing a deep emerald gown on her desk. "This one," he said, tapping the page, "has potential. But it's missing a spark. Something that makes people stop, look closer, remember it. Not just admire, it needs to haunt them." Alexandra's pulse quickened. The gown was elegant, yes, but she hadn't thought of it as haunting. "Perhaps a subtle asymmetrical shoulder cut," she suggested cautiously, with hand-embroidered silver vines trailing down the bodice. "It could evoke movement, like water flowing." Jack studied her face, then the sketch again. A slow nod. "Better. You're beginning to understand the language of impact." He paused, leaning against the table. "You have talent, Alexandra. But talent alone won't carry you through London. You need resilience, precision, and a bit of fearlessness." She smiled faintly, the words igniting a spark of determination within her. "I'm ready to learn," she said softly, almost to herself. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Alexandra adjusted drapes, pinned sketches to mannequins, and experimented with silk and chiffon under the bright studio lights, while Jack moved around her like a shadow of scrutiny and subtle guidance. Occasionally, he'd lift a piece of fabric to examine its movement, nodding once when it caught his eye or giving a brief, precise critique. Each time, Alexandra felt a rush of adrenaline, a mixture of pride and anxiety. His approval was rare, but when it came, it was almost intoxicating. By late afternoon, the studio had quieted, the clatter of sewing machines reduced to gentle hums. Alexandra paused, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and surveyed her work. Jack leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a rare softness in his expression. "You're dedicated," he said quietly, the words carrying more weight than any critique. "Most people would have folded under the pressure. But you keep moving." "I like seeing my ideas come to life," Alexandra replied, her voice steady despite the rapid beat of her heart. "It's why I'm here." Jack's lips twitched in what could almost be called a smile. "Good. Keep this focus. London won't forgive hesitation. Mistakes are costly here. But if you survive, if you truly understand the rhythm, the city can be kind in its own brutal way." There was a moment of silence. Alexandra felt a subtle tension, an unspoken understanding bridging the gap between professional scrutiny and something more personal. She felt it too, a spark of curiosity and something unnameable. Her fingers brushed the silk gown again, and she realized how much this world demanded from her, and yet, how alive it made her feel. The sun dipped lower, golden light spilling across the studio. Alexandra packed her sketchpad, her mind racing not just with design concepts, but with a growing sense of purpose. The week had been intense, exhilarating, and exhausting, but she was ready. Whatever storms London Fashion Week might bring, she would meet them head-on. And perhaps, somewhere amid the fabric, the sketches, and the relentless pursuit of perfection, she might find more than just success. As she left the studio, the doors closing softly behind her, Alexandra couldn't shake the thought that this first week was only the beginning. Every glance from Jack, every critique, every suggestion was a small thread weaving a complex, invisible tapestry between them. She felt it tug at her, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure, and for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine not just the collection, but the possibilities that lay ahead, professionally, and maybe, just maybe, personally as well. The morning air was crisp as Alexandra stepped into Monarch & Company, the city streets of London still slick from a late-night drizzle. She carried her sketchpad and a small notebook filled with fabric swatches, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Today wasn't just another day in the studio. Today, she would present her first full concept to Jack and the senior design team, a pivotal moment that could define her place in the company. Inside, the studio hummed with activity. Sewing machines whirred, assistants buzzed between racks of fabrics, and sunlight streamed through the enormous windows, glinting off the polished floors and shimmering textiles. Alexandra paused briefly, inhaling the heady mixture of perfume, starch, and silk that always seemed to linger in creative spaces. She was ready. Jack appeared from the corner of the room, his gray eyes scanning a digital tablet as he made quick notes. His black shirt sleeves were rolled up, a rare relaxed look, though his presence still carried the weight of authority. The moment he saw Alexandra, his gaze softened, just slightly. "Morning," he said, nodding. "Ready?" Alexandra nodded, setting her sketchpad on the presentation table. "I've integrated the suggestions from yesterday. I think this version will be cohesive but still daring." Jack glanced at the sketches, his eyes narrowing as he examined each design. Evening gowns with intricate embroidery, asymmetrical coats with subtle hints of metallic threads, and flowing dresses that danced with movement on paper, all formed a narrative Alexandra had worked tirelessly to create. She had infused each piece with elements of motion, story, and elegance, hoping Jack would recognize the hours of labor hidden beneath the surface. "This is impressive," he said finally, tapping a sketch of a deep sapphire gown. "The way you've blended classic elegance with bold details, it's unexpected. London will notice this." Alexandra allowed herself a small, relieved smile. "Thank you. I've been experimenting with silk overlays and hand-stitched metallic patterns. The idea is to make the fabric itself tell a story." Jack raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Bold, but precise. You might just pull it off." His words were rare praise, and Alexandra felt her chest tighten with a mix of pride and anxiety. The rest of the morning passed in a whirlwind of adjustments. Alexandra worked closely with her assistants, fine-tuning cuts and draping fabric on mannequins. Jack moved around her with an almost predatory precision, offering sharp suggestions, subtle critiques, and occasionally, a quiet word of encouragement. His presence was overwhelming, yet it pushed Alexandra to perform beyond what she thought was possible. As the afternoon sun began to dip, Alexandra felt the first pangs of fatigue. She was about to run through the final adjustments when Jack approached, carrying 2 mugs of steaming coffee. He handed one to her with a small smile. "You're working late," he observed, his tone casual, but with an edge that suggested concern. "I want this to be perfect," Alexandra admitted. "It's not just my first major presentation. It's my chance to show I belong here." Jack leaned against the table, studying her as if trying to gauge more than her work. "Perfection is elusive," he said softly. "But dedication, that's noticeable. And you have plenty of that." A flicker of warmth stirred in Alexandra's chest. Jack's words were different from his usual critiques. They were personal, subtle, almost intimate in their encouragement. Later that evening, the team gathered around as Alexandra presented the collection. Fabrics shimmered under the studio lights. Mannequins wore designs that combined classical silhouettes with daring asymmetry, and embroidered patterns glinted like delicate constellations. Alexandra's voice remained steady as she described her choices, but inside, adrenaline surged. The room was silent for a moment after she finished, the kind of tense pause that made her stomach twist. Then Jack stepped forward, breaking the quiet. "This is exceptional," he said, voice low but clear. "Every piece tells a story. It's cohesive, ambitious, and unforgettable. Alexandra, you've set the bar high." Her heart leapt. Compliments from Jack were rare, and she could feel the weight of his approval like sunlight on her skin. Around her, the senior designers nodded, murmuring their agreement. The studio, usually so full of quiet skepticism, seemed momentarily transformed into a place of awe. "Thank you," Alexandra whispered, barely above the hum of the room. She felt a rush of pride, and something more complicated, a flutter she couldn't quite define. As the team dispersed, Jack lingered, his gray eyes locking on hers. "You've done well," he said. "But don't let this make you complacent. London Fashion Week will demand more, and we need every detail perfect." "I understand," she replied, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and exhilaration. "I'll give it everything." For a moment, they stood there, the studio quiet except for the distant hum of the city outside. Alexandra caught a glimpse of something in Jack's expression, pride, perhaps, but also a flicker of something else. She couldn't place it, yet it sent a thrill through her chest. Later, alone in the studio, Alexandra allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She picked up a silver-threaded sketch, running her fingers over the delicate patterns. The applause from the presentation echoed in her memory, the validation and recognition a balm to months of anxiety and self-doubt. And yet, in the back of her mind, she thought of Jack, his rare smiles, the weight behind his eyes, the way he lingered in moments that should have been brief. It was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. She had come to London seeking success, but she was beginning to realize she might have found something else entirely, a challenge not just in fabric and thread, but in the quiet, undeniable pull of connection. Night fell over the city, rain pattering softly against the studio windows. Alexandra stayed late, adjusting drapes, fine-tuning embroidery, and making notes for the next day. She felt exhaustion tugging at her limbs, but a quiet determination kept her rooted. Jack, observing from the doorway, didn't comment. He didn't need to. Alexandra knew he was watching, his eyes following her movements, the faintest shadow of a smile on his lips. She felt it, a current between them, subtle, unspoken, electric. And as the city lights reflected off wet streets below, Alexandra realized that this was only the beginning. The first triumph was behind her, but the real challenges and the undeniable sparks were just beginning. The grand hall of Somerset House gleamed under the golden lights, its high ceilings echoing faintly with the hum of anticipation. Alexandra adjusted the final folds on the deep burgundy gown, its silk cascading like molten velvet, and took a breath. Her collection, was moments away from being unveiled to the world. Jack appeared at her side, hands casually in his pockets, observing quietly. "Everything ready?" he asked, his voice low, carrying a weight of both authority and expectation. Alexandra nodded, though a flicker of doubt ran through her. Months of late nights, endless fittings, and obsessive attention to detail had led to this moment. The models, dressed in a harmony of textures, colors, and daring cuts, were lined up backstage, their poise as polished as the pieces they wore. When the lights dimmed and the music swelled, Alexandra felt a sudden surge of adrenaline. Models emerged onto the runway, each garment telling a story of meticulous craftsmanship and bold innovation. Tweed coats with unexpected asymmetry, flowing dresses embroidered with metallic threads reflecting the stage lights, and delicate accessories that caught the eye without overwhelming it. The narrative was seamless. The applause was immediate, thunderous, echoing against the ornate walls. Alexandra's heart raced as she caught Jack's gaze from the front row. For the first time, his expression was unguarded. A rare smile brushed his lips, and he nodded subtly, acknowledgement clear. As the show concluded, flashes from cameras illuminated the hall like starlight. Alexandra stepped forward to take her bow, feeling both the exhaustion of relentless preparation and the euphoria of triumph. The moment was electric, the world at her feet, yet she barely noticed the cheers. Her eyes found Jack again, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that this shared achievement had shifted their dynamic irreversibly. Backstage, the chaos was immediate. Editors, investors, and journalists swarmed, eager to dissect every detail, every stitch. Alexandra moved with practiced composure, fielding questions and absorbing praise, but beneath the surface, a subtle tension lingered. She had conquered the stage, yet the undercurrents of emotion between her and Jack remained unresolved. Jack approached her quietly, his presence steady amid the whirlwind. "You did it," he said, voice warm but restrained. Alexandra's lips curved into a tired but genuine smile. "We did it, Jack," she replied, the shared victory acknowledging more than just professional success. The next day, the studio buzzed with new energy. Alexandra returned to Monarch and Company, greeted by stacks of new fabric samples, sketches, and urgent emails from international partners expressing interest in collaborations. The exhilaration of Fashion Week had faded, leaving room for the relentless pulse of creation. She was deep into planning the next collection when a knock at the studio door interrupted her thoughts. Jack entered, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee, his presence calm but commanding. Eastern Echo, he began, setting a mug down in front of her, isn't going to design itself. Are you ready? Alexandra's smile faltered only slightly. The pressure was immense, but she felt a surge of determination. I've been brainstorming. Silk kimonos, paired with modern tailoring, mixing East and West. It's ambitious, but I think it could redefine the season. Jack leaned over her sketches, examining the lines, the proposed fabrics, the flow of the collection. Ambitious is good, he said. Just make sure it's precise. We don't have 3 months. We have 3 weeks before the Japanese buyers arrive. Hours passed with meticulous work. Jack wasn't just observing. He was engaged, suggesting subtle alterations to enhance movement, advising on textures that would catch light differently, offering insight that went beyond mere management. Alexandra noticed a softness in his approach, a subtle attentiveness that contrasted sharply with his usual stern demeanor. Yet, the fragile harmony of her focus shattered abruptly 2 days later. During lunch at a small cafe near the studio, a familiar figure appeared, casting a shadow over her table. Lucas Parker, her past, her regret, stood there, blonde hair tousled, eyes reflecting a complicated mix of remorse and longing. Alexandra, he said, voice tentative. I need to see you. Her fork froze midair. Memories of betrayal, broken promises, and heartache surged back, raw and immediate. What are you doing here? She demanded, voice tight. Lucas slid into the chair opposite her uninvited, exuding a confidence she no longer trusted. Work brought me to London, he said. But I couldn't leave without trying to make things right. I regret what happened. Alexandra's hands clenched around her cutlery, knuckles whitening. For years of shared dreams, then a final shattering betrayal. She had loved him, truly, but betrayal left wounds that hadn't fully healed. Are you serious? She asked, voice laced with disbelief. After everything, you think a simple apology changes the past? Lucas reached for her hand, his eyes wide with desperation. I know I don't deserve you, but I've realized I lost the best thing in my life. Just give me one more chance. Alexandra pulled back sharply, standing. I need time, she said, leaving the cafe, the drizzle matching the storm in her mind. Her focus wavered, blurred by the sudden re-entry of a past she thought she had buried. Returning to the studio, she tried to immerse herself in Eastern Echo's development, but Lucas's presence lingered. Calls, messages, even flowers, all reminders of a life she no longer wanted. Jack noticed, a subtle tension in his expression, the unspoken question in his eyes. You okay? He asked, stopping by her desk. Alexandra forced a smile, but her trembling hand betrayed her. Jack picked up the fallen pencil she hadn't noticed, returning it with quiet care. I'm fine, she said. Yet she knew the truth. Fine was a luxury she could not afford. Evenings grew long. Jack stayed late, reviewing fabrics, adjusting patterns, suggesting minor yet transformative tweaks. His focus was unwavering, yet she sensed an unspoken concern, a closeness that went beyond professional boundaries. They shared quiet meals over scattered sketches, laughter punctuating the intense, creative energy of the nights. But Lucas's persistence shadowed every moment, appearing at the studio, sending messages, a constant reminder of unresolved history. Alexandra knew she had to confront it, to make choices not just about her career, but her heart. 2 weeks before Eastern Echo's next launch, Alexandra and Jack were alone in the design room, testing fabrics and silhouettes for the collection. The room was quiet save for the soft hum of machinery and the occasional rustle of silk. Jack moved beside her, adjusting a fold on a kimono sleeve, his hands brushing hers briefly. You're pushing yourself too hard, he murmured. Alexandra felt a warmth spread through her at the contact. And you, she replied, teasing, aren't you supposed to be supervising, not overworking yourself? Jack smirked, but didn't argue, his gaze lingering longer than necessary. In that quiet moment, Alexandra realized the stakes were no longer only professional. The connection between them was undeniable, intricate, and laden with tension, a current she couldn't ignore. The next day, Lucas appeared again at the building entrance, a large bouquet in hand. Alexandra froze as Jack, arriving moments later, witnessed the scene from the elevator. He said nothing, but the subtle shift in his posture, the tightness in his jaw, hinted at emotions he had not yet named. The coming weeks promised triumphs and confrontations, creations and confessions. Alexandra knew that the path ahead would test not just her designs, but the delicate entanglements of the heart. Rain tapped lightly against the tall windows of Alexandra's studio, a steady rhythm that mirrored the storm brewing in her mind. Eastern Echo was progressing beautifully, silks dyed in muted pastels, bold kimonos paired with structured London tailoring, but the shadow of Lucas Parker loomed over every stitch. Jack entered quietly, holding a tray with 2 cups of espresso. He set them down beside her sketches, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said softly. "And you're still thinking about him." Alexandra sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "I can't just switch off my mind," she admitted. "He keeps showing up, Jack. Texts, flowers, even at the studio entrance. It's impossible not to think about it." Jack's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He wanted to say something, anything, to make her stop worrying, but he knew that pressuring her would only push her further into confusion. Instead, he leaned against the edge of the table, letting his presence anchor her. Hours passed with meticulous work. Jack suggested minor alterations to fabrics, adjustments in silhouette, and embroidery placements that would catch the stage lights just so. Alexandra watched him, the tension between them palpable. The closeness, the shared laughter over spilled ink and misaligned patterns, the subtle brush of hands. It was intoxicating. And yet, Lucas lingered like a ghost she hadn't fully exorcised. 2 days later, Alexandra received another message. "Meet me at the cafe near the studio. I need to talk, one last time. Please." She stared at the screen, heart hammering. She had to face him, close the chapter for good. But the thought of Jack seeing her with Lucas made her stomach twist. Still, she couldn't avoid it forever. By 6, the drizzle had thickened into a steady rain. Alexandra wrapped herself in a long gray coat, umbrella clutched in hand, and walked through the slick streets toward the cafe. Lucas was already there, standing under the warm glow of the awning, his eyes flickering between hope and anxiety. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice low, almost pleading. Alexandra nodded stiffly, keeping her distance as she seated herself. "Go ahead," she prompted, voice firm. Lucas took a deep breath, hands clasped as if to steady himself. "I know I don't deserve a second chance. But Alexandra, I was a fool. I lost you, and I regret it every day. You were everything to me. I want you back." Alexandra listened, the old ache resurfacing, memories of quiet evenings, whispered promises, and broken trust flooding her mind. But her heart had changed. Words that once melted her now felt distant, like the persistent drizzle outside. "Lucas," she said, voice calm but resolute, "I loved you once. I can't go back. It's over." He reached across the table, gripping her hand tightly. "I'll prove I've changed. Just one chance." Alexandra pulled away slowly, standing. "I'm sorry. Goodbye." She left without looking back, stepping into the rain, the umbrella shaking in the wind, droplets soaking her hair and coat. The encounter left her shaken, but clarity began to take root. She had made a choice, even if Jack didn't yet know it. Her thoughts immediately turned to him. Jack, the man who had supported her through sleepless nights, encouraged her boldest decisions, and challenged her creatively in ways Lucas never had. But the timing was cruel. Jack hadn't been seen around the studio for 3 days. Meetings were skipped, emails curt and distant. Alexandra felt the sharp sting of his absence, each unanswered message a silent echo of misunderstanding. Her colleagues noticed too. "What's wrong with him?" one asked casually, but Alexandra could only shake her head, forcing a smile. Finally, news arrived that couldn't wait. Grayson and Company had been nominated for Collection of the Year at the British Fashion Awards for Eastern Echo. Alexandra knew she needed Jack by her side, not just professionally, but to confront the unspoken tension between them. She refused to let miscommunication sabotage their bond. By 8 that evening, she braved the pouring rain to reach his penthouse in Mayfair, retracing the steps she'd taken months ago during that fateful night when everything between them had subtly shifted. The umbrella slipped from her hand as she reached the building, rolling away in the runoff. She ignored it, pressing the buzzer with trembling fingers. Jack opened the door, hair damp, shirt clinging slightly from his own rush in the rain. His blue eyes widened at the sight of her. "Alexandra, what are you doing out here like this?" She stepped inside, rainwater dripping onto the polished wood floors. "We need to talk," she said firmly, her voice steady despite her shivering body. Jack's arms crossed, a mixture of caution and unresolved emotion in his posture. "About what?" he asked. "You and Lucas," she blurted, frustration breaking through. "I saw him at the cafe. That's why you've been avoiding me. You think I chose him?" "I didn't." Jack froze, tension tightening his features. You didn't. His voice was low, tinged with relief, and something else he didn't want to name. No, she said firmly, stepping closer. I met him to close that chapter, not reopen it. I don't love him anymore. You mean more to me than anyone. Jack's expression softened, disbelief and joy mingling in his gaze. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. Then, a laugh, a big, easy laugh, escaped him. You look like a drenched cat, he said, pulling her into his arms. And still fierce. Alexandra leaned into him, laughing through tears, finally allowing the tension to dissolve. Then why didn't you ask me sooner? She murmured. Jack pressed his forehead to hers. Because I was scared. Scared you'd say you picked him. Scared I'd lose you before I even admitted. I couldn't lose you at all. Their lips met in a kiss, gentle yet intense, a release of months of unspoken emotions. Rainwater dripped from their coats, mingling with the heat of the moment, but neither cared. When they finally pulled apart, Jack's hands cupped her face. You're soaked, he said, chuckling. Need my shirt again? Just this once, Alexandra replied, smiling. Together, they changed, warmed by each other, laughter spilling between them like sunlight through storm clouds. That night marked not just the end of misunderstandings, but the beginning of something unshakable. Back in the studio the next morning, they worked side by side, the tension replaced by quiet confidence. Alexandra's sketches were bold, Jack's suggestions precise, their collaboration seamless. The launch of Eastern Echoes loomed near, but for the first time, she knew she would not face it alone. The city skyline shimmered beneath the late afternoon sun as Alexandra and Jack stood on the balcony of the Grayson and Company headquarters, overlooking the bustling streets of London. The Eastern Echo collection had taken the fashion world by storm. Orders from Japan, Korea, and China poured in, and the pressure to meet expectations was immense. But despite the chaos, Alexandra felt a quiet exhilaration. Jack leaned against the railing beside her, sipping coffee. Do you realize how far we've come? He asked, voice low. From late nights cutting fabric to this, his gaze swept across the skyline. Alexandra smiled faintly, hands wrapped around her mug. I do. But the work isn't over. Asia's market is just getting started. They'll want something more, something groundbreaking. The next day, the team gathered in the design room. Alexandra spread out sketches, fabrics, and mood boards across the long oak table. We're adding a capsule line specifically for Tokyo Fashion Week, she announced. Modern kimonos blended with European tailoring. Minimalist, but elegant. We need it to feel bold, yet delicate. Jack leaned forward, examining a hand-embroidered silk pattern. What if we use metallic thread subtly? A hint of shimmer to catch the lights. Alexandra nodded, excitement sparking in her eyes. Yes, subtle but noticeable. And we can layer with neutral tones, letting the embroidery speak for itself. Over the next few days, the studio buzzed with activity. Patterns were cut, fabrics dyed, models measured. Jack stayed late more often than not, meticulously ensuring every detail matched Alexandra's vision. But beyond the professional intensity, the personal bond between them deepened. Small gestures, a hand brushed over a sleeve, a shared smile over a spilled spool of thread, reminded Alexandra why she had chosen him over Lucas. Yet Lucas's shadow lingered at the edges of her mind. He had texted occasionally, polite and restrained, but Alexandra's resolve remained firm. She focused entirely on the collection and on Jack. She found herself savoring the quiet moments with him, where laughter and teasing replaced tension. One evening, as the rain lashed against the studio windows, Jack set a small tray of sushi in front of Alexandra. Eat before you collapse, he teased. You've been at this for 14 hours straight. Alexandra chuckled, accepting a piece with chopsticks. And you're just as guilty, Mr. CEO. Jack smiled, eyes softening. I just want it perfect. And I want to protect you from burning out. Hours melted into nights filled with coffee, sketches, and testing fabrics on mannequins. Alexandra experimented with layering kimonos over structured dresses, balancing traditional patterns with contemporary cuts. Jack suggested subtle cherry blossom embroidery, placing tiny motifs that would shimmer under spotlights. Together, they created harmony between East and West, modernity and tradition. The team's dedication culminated in the night before the Tokyo showcase. Alexandra, exhausted but exhilarated, stared at the completed pieces arranged neatly on racks. The silk flowed like water, the embroidery caught the light like fire, and the accessories, delicate yet striking, completed the vision. Jack stepped beside her, holding a black coat. Ready to show the world what we've made. Alexandra smiled, feeling the weight of months of effort. As ready as I'll ever be. The following day, they boarded the flight to Tokyo. Alexandra peered out of the window at the clouds below, thoughts drifting between nerves and excitement. Jack sat beside her, gently holding her hand. "No matter what happens tomorrow," he said softly, "we've already succeeded. We've created something remarkable together." The Tokyo Fashion Week venue was a sleek, modern hall, lights gleaming off polished floors. Editors, buyers, and journalists from across Asia packed the front rows. Alexandra's team hustled backstage, making final adjustments. Jack's presence was a steady anchor, his sharp eyes scanning every detail, yet softening whenever they met hers. When the models finally stepped onto the runway, the crowd fell silent, captivated. Kimonos in muted silks flowed over structured dresses, embroidered with delicate metallic threads that caught the lights at every turn. Accessories, pearls, silver cuffs, and minimalistic handbags completed the ensemble. Each look told a story, Eastern elegance meeting London innovation. Thunderous applause erupted as Alexandra and Jack took their bows, standing side by side. Alexandra's heart swelled, not just with pride for the collection, but with the certainty of her feelings for Jack. He squeezed her hand, eyes sparkling with the same mixture of pride and admiration she felt. After the show, the press swarmed the backstage area. Cameras flashed, articles were dictated, and interviews conducted. Alexandra and Jack handled everything seamlessly, their connection evident in their teamwork and unspoken understanding. Yet amidst the chaos, Alexandra's thoughts drifted. Lucas's memory lingered, but now it felt like a shadow she no longer feared, just a faint echo from a closed chapter. Back in the hotel suite later that night, Alexandra slumped onto the sofa, exhausted. Jack knelt beside her, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "You did it," he murmured. "Every single detail, perfect." Alexandra leaned against him, feeling a deep warmth. "We did it," she corrected softly. Together, they spent the night reviewing photos from the runway, discussing potential adjustments for European markets. Every conversation, every shared laugh, every quiet glance deepened their bond. Alexandra realized that the collection's success was not measured solely in applause or orders, but in the unspoken trust and connection between them. The next morning, Alexandra awoke to the soft light filtering through the hotel window. Jack was already up, sketching ideas for the next project. She watched him, heart full, realizing that this partnership, this love, was the foundation for everything she had worked toward. Eastern Echo had conquered London and Tokyo, but Alexandra knew the journey was far from over. Together with Jack, she was ready to face the next challenges, blending passion, creativity, and love into every step of the way. And in that moment, as the city of Tokyo awoke beneath them, Alexandra felt a rare certainty. The future, unpredictable and dazzling, would be theirs to shape, side by side. London glimmered beneath a blanket of early winter fog as Alexandra and Jack arrived at the Royal Albert Hall. The city had been alive all week with anticipation. The British Fashion Awards were the pinnacle, a celebration of innovation, creativity, and style. Alexandra clutched her clutch nervously, the Eastern Echo collection tucked into the memories of every runway moment she had lived. Jack, ever the composed CEO, slid an arm around her waist. "Relax," he murmured, though the tension in his eyes betrayed him. "You've done everything perfectly. Now just enjoy it." Alexandra allowed herself a small smile, leaning into him for a fraction of a second before taking a deep breath and entering the grand hall. The red carpet was a whirlwind. Flashbulbs popped incessantly, journalists called out names, and designers in every imaginable shade and silhouette strutted past. Alexandra felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, but she focused on Jack. His hand held hers tightly, a grounding force amid the chaos. Inside, the hall glittered with chandeliers, the audience a mixture of high-profile editors, celebrities, and industry insiders. Alexandra's designs had already garnered praise, but nothing could prepare her for the moment of announcement. The host, a tall, elegantly dressed woman, took the stage. And now, for Collection of the Year. Alexandra's heart pounded in her chest. Jack's hand squeezed hers gently, as if he could anchor her racing thoughts. The award goes to Eastern Echoes by Grayson and Company. The hall erupted. Applause, whistles, and cheers reverberated through the ornate space. Alexandra's legs felt weak, and Jack leaned closer, whispering, "We did it." She nodded, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. Backstage, the team erupted in celebration. Cameras, confetti, and champagne bottles created a whirlwind of chaos. Alexandra and Jack moved through it, accepting congratulations and handshakes. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of the journey, the sleepless nights, the painstaking adjustments, the relentless pursuit of perfection. It had all led to this. Jack pulled her aside, away from the noise. "You were incredible," he said, his voice low but charged with emotion. "Every stitch, every fabric choice, every detail, you brought it to life." Alexandra looked up, catching his gaze. "We brought it to life," she corrected, a soft smile on her lips. Together, the night stretched on, but Alexandra couldn't shake a small knot in her stomach. She glanced toward the entrance, half expecting Lucas to appear, but he didn't. That chapter was closed. Jack noticed her distracted glance. "What's on your mind?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "Nothing. Just thinking about how far we've come." He nodded, understanding, but before the moment could deepen, an assistant appeared with a last-minute request. A photo session on the balcony with the city skyline behind them. Alexandra and Jack stepped outside, the night crisp against their skin. Flashbulbs illuminated them as they posed, and Alexandra felt a surge of clarity. The applause, the recognition, the success. It was gratifying, yes. But the moment that mattered most was here, now, beside Jack. She realized she didn't need accolades to validate her heart. It had already chosen. Later, when the crowds had thinned and the hall had emptied, Alexandra and Jack found themselves alone on the balcony. London stretched endlessly, a sea of lights mirrored in the Thames. Jack's hand found hers again. "Alexandra," he said, voice quieter now, "I love you. I have from the beginning, but I was afraid you wouldn't feel the same." Her heart skipped. She pressed her other hand against his chest. "I love you too, Jack. I just needed to be sure that we could face everything together." His lips curved into a rare, soft smile. "We do, and we will. No more fears, no more doubts." The night air swirled around them as Jack drew her closer. The city's lights sparkled beneath them, but all Alexandra could see was him. Their first kiss on the balcony was slow, deliberate, and full of the kind of warmth that could weather any storm. The applause from the awards hall seemed distant now, inconsequential compared to the moment they shared. The following weeks were a whirlwind of press, interviews, and business meetings. Alexandra and Jack balanced the high demands of Grayson and company with their private connection. Every new idea, every new sketch, became a shared venture. They worked late into the night, reviewing fabrics and patterns, often laughing over mistakes or playful teasing. One evening, Jack leaned back in his chair, eyes thoughtful. "You know, I never thought I'd find someone who challenges me, who inspires me, and who makes me feel like," he trailed off. Alexandra raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Like I'm not just building a fashion empire," he said finally, "but building a life worth living. With you." Alexandra's heart swelled. She reached across the table, taking his hand. "Then let's make it extraordinary. Together." As the city slept beneath them, Alexandra realized the journey was only beginning. There would be more challenges, more sleepless nights, and perhaps moments of doubt. But with Jack, every challenge became an opportunity, every late night a shared adventure, and every triumph a testament to their partnership, both in business and in love. The British Fashion Awards had been the pinnacle of recognition, but Alexandra understood now that the true victory was the bond they had forged, the intertwining of hearts and ambitions, of dreams and reality. And with that knowledge, she could face anything. London's lights glimmered like stars reflected in the Thames, a silent witness to their triumph. And as Alexandra and Jack stood side by side, hand in hand, she knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, with love, ambition, and unshakable trust. The weeks following the British Fashion Awards were a blur of activity for Alexandra and Jack. Grayson and Company was now a name that resonated globally. Orders poured in from Tokyo, Seoul, and New York, and the pressure to deliver excellence never relented. Alexandra spent her days in her design studio, sketching, draping, and refining fabrics, while Jack managed meetings, investors, and logistics. Yet, despite the intensity, the rhythm they had established together made the chaos manageable. One rainy morning, Alexandra sat at her drafting table, fingers smudged with charcoal and ink, when Jack appeared at the doorway, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. "I figured you might need a little pick-me-up," he said, setting one beside her. She smiled, grateful for the small gesture, and took a sip. The warmth seeped into her bones, a brief but welcome reprieve from the whirlwind around them. "We need to finalize the Paris branch plans," Jack said, leaning against the doorway. "They expect a full presentation by next week." Alexandra nodded, jotting down notes on her tablet. Expansion had been a dream, but now it was tangible. The new office would feature an atelier for emerging designers, a showroom for clients, and a state-of-the-art studio for experimental fabrics. It would be a testament to their ambition, their vision, and, most importantly, their partnership. Later that afternoon, Alexandra tested a new collection inspired by the Thames at night. Silk dresses in deep navy and emerald, accented with delicate pearl embroidery reminiscent of raindrops catching the lamplight. Jack watched her from across the studio, arms folded, his expression serious yet soft. The shimmer on the fabric, it's perfect, he said, gesturing to a particular gown. But the hemline could be slightly longer for elegance. Alexandra smiled, appreciating the input. You always notice the details, she teased. He shrugged. Some habits are hard to break. Their collaboration was seamless. Jack's eye for aesthetics and Alexandra's creative intuition complemented one another, and the team thrived under their combined leadership. Still, amidst the success, personal moments remained rare but cherished. One evening, Alexandra found a handwritten note tucked into her design folder. Dinner at Covent Garden. Tonight. Don't be late. She grinned, knowing Jack had orchestrated it. At the cozy restaurant, the warm glow of candlelight cast soft shadows across their faces. Conversation flowed effortlessly, from discussing Eastern Echo's continued success to playful debates over color combinations and future projects. Jack reached across the table, brushing a strand of hair from Alexandra's face. You know, he murmured, I still get nervous when I think about how far we've come. I don't want to lose this, us. Alexandra's heart quickened. You won't, she replied softly. We've built this together. And I trust you. Their eyes met, unspoken promises flowing between them. The intimacy was quiet, understated, but no less powerful than the applause of the awards hall. Back at the studio, late nights became their norm. Fabrics were measured, sketches revised, and new collections conceptualized. One night, as snowflakes began to dust the city streets outside, Alexandra was struggling with a complex design involving layered silk and hand-painted embroidery. Jack knelt beside her, adjusting a seam on a mannequin with precise movements. It's delicate work, he observed, but you've got the patience for it. Alexandra laughed softly, brushing her hands through his hair absent-mindedly. You've got the patience to survive me, she replied. The dynamic between them deepened, blending professional respect with personal intimacy. Alexandra noticed subtle changes in Jack, small gestures, like leaving her favorite snacks on the drafting table or remembering a color preference without being prompted. Likewise, Jack saw Alexandra's dedication and vulnerability, realizing that her strength lay not only in talent, but in her passion and heart. Challenges arose, of course. Investors questioned the pace of expansion, and certain high-profile clients demanded last-minute alterations. Alexandra sometimes felt the weight of expectation pressing down, but Jack was always there, offering guidance, support, and occasionally, a shoulder to lean on. One particularly tense evening, after an exhaustive fabric fitting, Alexandra slumped into a chair. I don't know if I can keep up, she admitted. Jack knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. You've already done more than most could dream of, he said. And you're not doing it alone. We do this together. Their partnership was no longer just about business. It had become a shared rhythm of life. Alexandra found herself smiling more, inspired not only by her own creativity, but by Jack's unwavering belief in her. Likewise, Jack discovered a joy in their collaboration that extended beyond strategy and success. It was personal, deep, and irrevocable. Amid the hectic schedule, they carved out moments for themselves. Early mornings in quiet cafes, weekend strolls along the Thames, or simple evenings cooking together in Jack's penthouse. Each small gesture, each shared laugh, reinforced the bond that had been forged amidst deadlines, fabrics, and city lights. As winter deepened, the team prepared for the next seasonal showcase. Alexandra envisioned a collection reflecting urban elegance, interwoven with cultural inspirations from Asia and Europe. Jack coordinated with sponsors and logistics, ensuring that every detail matched her vision. One evening, while reviewing samples, Jack looked up from a swatch of emerald silk. This collection is going to be something extraordinary, he said. But it's more than that. It's ours. Alexandra felt a warmth spread through her chest. Ours, she echoed. Not just the company, not just the designs, but the partnership, the love, the shared ambition. In that moment, amidst the hum of sewing machines and the scent of fresh fabrics, Alexandra realized that this, Jack, the studio, the life they were building together, was everything she had ever wanted. As the snow fell softly outside, Alexandra and Jack stood side by side in the studio, hands intertwined, watching the city glow. The future was uncertain, full of new challenges and endless possibilities, but together, they knew they could face anything. London's skyline twinkled like a promise, and Alexandra whispered softly, "This is just the beginning." Jack smiled, pressing his forehead to hers. "The beginning of everything," he replied. The early weeks of the new year brought both promise and pressure to Alexandra and Jack. Grayson and Company's Paris branch was scheduled to open in 3 months, and expectations were higher than ever. Alexandra was consumed by her designs, meticulously blending European elegance with Asian influences, while Jack navigated investor meetings, press inquiries, and logistics with unwavering focus. Yet, just as their rhythm seemed seamless, the past quietly crept back into their lives. One rainy Tuesday, Alexandra arrived at the studio to find a letter slipped under her door. The envelope was sleek, black, and unmarked. With a cautious curiosity, she tore it open. Inside was a single photograph, a candid shot of her and Jack from their rainy night at the penthouse months ago, arms intertwined, laughter frozen in the frame. No signature, just the image and a typed line at the bottom. Not everything is as it seems. Her stomach tightened. Someone had been watching them. Alexandra's mind raced through possibilities: rivals, jealous ex-clients, or a journalist who had caught wind of their personal connection. But one thing was certain: the photograph was meant to unsettle her. She quickly showed Jack when he arrived, still in his tailored gray coat, hair slightly damp from London drizzle. His expression darkened, brows furrowing. "We need to find out who sent this," he said, gripping her hand briefly for reassurance. The next day, Alexandra's designer inbox overflowed with urgent emails from European clients requesting changes to sample pieces. Each message seemed more demanding than the last, creating a mounting pressure she could barely manage. Jack stayed late into the night with her, revising schedules and calming her anxieties. Yet, even in his presence, Alexandra felt the unease of unseen eyes. As they worked late, Jack paused, gazing at her with unusual intensity. "Alexandra, have you ever regretted leaving anything unresolved in your past?" he asked quietly, concern evident in his voice. Alexandra hesitated, thinking of her brief, turbulent engagement with Lucas, her ex who had once nearly upended her life. "I try not to," she replied cautiously. "But sometimes, unresolved things have a way of catching up with you." Jack nodded, as if confirming a suspicion he hadn't wanted to voice. The tension escalated when a surprise inspection by a potential Japanese investor turned into a high-stakes negotiation. Alexandra's designs were scrutinized with meticulous attention, and any minor flaw drew sharp critique. The investor, Mr. Yamamoto, was stern and commanding, but also respected ingenuity. Alexandra presented her concept for an evening gown blending hand-painted silk with subtle metallic accents. Jack stood beside her, offering quiet support and translating technical explanations when needed. By the end of the meeting, Mr. Yamamoto's reserved nod was enough. Grayson and Company secured the contract, yet the encounter left Alexandra drained, the weight of expectation heavier than ever. Amid the professional stress, a familiar figure resurfaced. Adrian Cole, a former competitor turned industry ally, arrived unannounced at the London headquarters. His dark hair and sharp features carried an air of calculated charm. "Alexandra, Jack," he said, voice smooth, but eyes glinting with something unreadable. "I thought it was time we talked." Alexandra's instincts screamed caution. Adrian had a history of undermining rising designers, and the timing of his visit, so close to their Paris expansion, felt deliberate. Jack sensed her apprehension. "What do you want, Adrian?" he asked, protective but controlled. Adrian smiled, enigmatic. "Merely a conversation about potential collaboration, and ensuring that your past alliances aren't a liability." Alexandra stiffened. The subtle threat wasn't lost on her. Old rivalries, the delicate dance of the fashion world, and personal entanglements were converging, and the once clear path of their ascent now appeared fraught with shadows. Later, Alexandra confided in Jack, seated atop the high drafting table, sipping warm tea. "It's not just business anymore," she murmured. "There are people who want to test us, test me, and somehow, it always feels personal." Jack leaned back against the counter, brushing a hand across his face. "Then we'll face it together. Let them come. They'll see we're stronger than gossip, sabotage, or fear." His confidence was a balm, yet Alexandra noticed a flicker of worry beneath his composed exterior. Jack's fear wasn't for the business, but for her, and for the fragile equilibrium of their lives together. The days that followed were a crucible. Alexandra and Jack worked tirelessly, reviewing sample lines, adjusting fabrics, and meeting with global partners. Every minor flaw demanded correction, and every delayed shipment felt like a threat. Yet, amidst the chaos, they found moments of tenderness, a shared laugh over a misprinted fabric, an arm around shoulders while reviewing sketches, quiet reassurances whispered amid the hum of sewing machines. One evening, as snow began to fall lightly against the studio windows, Alexandra discovered an unexpected package on her desk. a selection of antique brooches from Asia, hand-delivered by a courier with no return address. Inside, a note read, "Inspiration sometimes comes from the past. Use it wisely." Alexandra felt a shiver run through her. The message was cryptic, perhaps encouraging, perhaps a warning. She showed it to Jack, who furrowed his brows. "We'll incorporate them carefully. Creativity should empower, not endanger," he said firmly, his hand finding hers across the table. Despite the mounting pressures and shadowed threats, Alexandra realized that these challenges, mysterious photographs, old rivals, demanding clients, also cemented their bond. She and Jack had become a single unit, not just in business, but in life. And while uncertainty lurked, Alexandra felt a surge of resolve. They had built something extraordinary, and she wasn't willing to let outside forces fracture it. By the time the first snow coated the London streets, Alexandra unveiled a new mini collection, a homage to resilience, blending bold silks, metallic embroidery, and classic cuts with daring asymmetry. Jack was beside her at the private viewing, offering encouragement and discreet critiques. The guests responded with enthusiasm, praising both innovation and execution. It was a triumph, not just of design, but of teamwork and unwavering trust. Yet, in quiet moments, Alexandra couldn't shake the lingering unease. Who had sent the photograph? Was Adrian's arrival a simple gesture or a strategic maneuver? And most importantly, how would the pressures of international expansion test the bond she and Jack had nurtured so carefully? Standing by the studio windows, snowflakes resting on the glass, Alexandra and Jack clasped hands. "Whatever comes next," Jack whispered, "we face it together." Alexandra nodded, heart steady despite the uncertainty. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but she knew one thing. Alongside Jack, she was ready for anything. And as London glimmered under the winter night sky, the city's lights reflecting off the icy streets, Alexandra felt a surge of determination. Shadows from the past might linger, rivals might plot, and the industry might demand perfection, but their foundation was unshakable. This was their world, their moment, and nothing, not fear, not jealousy, not uncertainty, could take it from them. The Paris branch launch loomed just a week away, and the studio was a whirlwind of activity. Alexandra and Jack had barely slept, reviewing samples, finalizing contracts, and coordinating logistics. Every decision carried weight, not just for the company, but for their reputation. Yet beneath the surface, the storm that had been quietly gathering over London and Paris was about to erupt. It began with an anonymous email to Alexandra's inbox late one night. "Not all allies are true. Trust carefully. No sender, no signature, only a file attached." Alexandra hesitated, opening it on her laptop. Inside was a series of surveillance photos, shots of her and Jack during intimate, private moments at the studio, including sketches spread across tables and moments they hadn't realized were being captured. Her breath caught. Someone had been watching them more closely than she imagined. Jack noticed her pallor when he walked in, hair tousled, a half-empty coffee mug in hand. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern sharpening his tone. Alexandra closed the laptop quickly. "It's nothing, just some prank," she lied. But Jack's eyes narrowed, seeing the tension she tried to hide. "If it's a threat, we deal with it together," he said firmly, his hand brushing hers on the table. Alexandra forced a nod, though her heart raced. The next morning brought Adrian Cole back into their lives, but this time with an air of menace rather than diplomacy. He appeared at the studio unannounced, dark coat buttoned, eyes assessing everything with precision. "Alexandra, Jack, I hope I'm not intruding," he said smoothly. "I merely thought we could collaborate before the Paris launch. You'll need someone with connections to handle sensitive matters." Alexandra's pulse quickened. Adrian's history suggested ulterior motives. Jack stepped slightly forward, protective yet composed. "What exactly do you mean by sensitive matters?" he asked, his voice low but firm. Adrian smirked. "Let's just say, your little secrets may not remain secrets for long." The tension was palpable. Alexandra and Jack exchanged glances. The Paris launch, which should have been their crowning achievement, now felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of hidden dangers. Yet they couldn't afford to falter. Orders needed to be finalized, media briefings scheduled, and every piece of the collection had to be flawless. They divided responsibilities. Alexandra focused on the creative execution, Jack on logistics and security. During a particularly late night in the Paris atelier, Alexandra felt a prickle of unease. Alone with her sketches, she noticed subtle inconsistencies in the pattern papers, smudges, faint marks. Someone had tampered with her designs. Panic clawed at her chest. Jack arrived moments later, seeing her distress. "Someone's trying to sabotage us," she whispered. Jack's jaw tightened. "We'll find them." Nothing or no one jeopardizes this. Not our work, not us. The following day, Jack's instincts proved correct. A junior assistant confessed that an unknown individual had been contacting them under the guise of a temporary contractor, requesting access to design files and making suspicious inquiries. Alexandra's blood ran cold. The invasion was personal. Someone wanted to disrupt not only the launch, but also her growing bond with Jack. As the Paris launch approached, the weight of these threats intertwined with personal strain. Alexandra was exhausted yet determined. Jack's unwavering support grounded her. One evening, as they prepared for a final runway rehearsal, he found her sitting on a drafting table, head in her hands. "Alexandra," he said gently, "you can't carry all this alone. Let me in." She looked up, eyes heavy. "I'm scared, Jack. What if all this, our work, us, is at risk?" Jack climbed beside her, taking her hands in his. "Then we fight. Together. Every threat, every shadow, they don't stand a chance against what we've built." Alexandra felt warmth spread through her, fear mingling with hope. They leaned into one another briefly, grounding themselves before the storm that awaited. The night of the Paris launch arrived with cinematic precision. Lights illuminated the grand hall, cameras flashed, and industry elites whispered in anticipation. Alexandra's collection, an intricate tapestry of hand-painted silks, embroidered metallic threads, and asymmetrical cuts, was poised to debut. Jack stayed behind the scenes, ensuring security, logistics, and press coordination ran flawlessly. Yet he kept one hand near Alexandra's, a subtle reminder that they faced this together. As the first model stepped onto the runway, a wave of tension swept the room. Alexandra watched with bated breath, every detail scrutinized. The audience erupted in applause as the designs flowed seamlessly, bold yet elegant, daring yet timeless. She caught Jack's eye across the room, and his rare, warm smile steadied her nerves. Midway through the show, an unexpected interruption rattled the backstage team. A misdelivered email had leaked a portion of the collection to a rival fashion house. Panic threatened to unravel everything. Jack immediately took charge, orchestrating a rapid damage control plan. He coordinated with tech staff, issued private embargo notices, and reassured the anxious models. Alexandra's mind raced, but she drew on her creativity and composure. Together, they executed a flawless salvage operation, ensuring the show continued without further incident. By the final walk, the crowd erupted. The applause was deafening, flashes illuminating Alexandra's triumphant smile. Jack stepped forward, embracing her tightly backstage. "We did it," he whispered. "Despite everything, we did it." Alexandra laughed, relief washing through her. "I couldn't have done it without you, Jack." Yet, even in triumph, the shadows of the past lingered. Adrian Cole had disappeared after the show, his intentions unknown. The anonymous surveillance photographer remained at large, and Alexandra understood that the challenges ahead, both professional and personal, were far from over. As Paris glittered under night skies, Alexandra and Jack stood on a balcony overlooking the Seine, the wind tugging at Alexandra's coat. "We've faced so much," she said softly, "and yet it feels like the real battle hasn't begun." Jack squeezed her hand, his eyes steady. "Then we fight it together, no matter what comes next." The city lights reflected off the water, glimmering like promises of uncharted opportunities. Alexandra and Jack embraced the uncertainty, knowing their bond, built on trust, creativity, and shared resilience, was unshakable. Whatever schemes, rivalries, or hidden dangers awaited, they were ready. The Paris launch was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where love, ambition, and courage would intertwine to test the limits of their hearts and minds. The weeks following the Paris launch were a whirlwind of interviews, fashion editorials, and private viewings for high-profile clients. Alexandra and Jack barely had a moment to breathe, yet the sense of achievement fueled them. Every late night in the atelier, every tense discussion over fabrics, and every rushed fitting had led to this. Their bond, forged through shared ambition and whispered confidences, had never felt stronger. Despite the success, the shadows of uncertainty lingered. The surveillance threat had not entirely vanished. Alexandra remained vigilant, ensuring sensitive designs were kept under lock and key, while Jack coordinated private security for the upcoming international showcase. They both knew that ambition, especially in the high-stakes world of fashion, often invited envy and sabotage. Yet this time, the stakes felt personal, not just for the brand, but for them as a couple. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the atelier windows, Alexandra carefully inspected the newest silk samples for their upcoming sustainable collection, Timeless Threads. Jack entered quietly, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "You've been at it since dawn," he said, handing her one. She took it gratefully, smiling. "It's worth it," she replied. "Every stitch, every design, it's all part of building something lasting." Jack's gaze softened, studying her as if memorizing the contours of her focus. The Timeless Threads collection was more than clothing. It was a statement. Flowing silk dresses with hand-embroidered floral patterns, minimalist coats with bold, asymmetrical cuts, and accessories crafted from recycled metals. Each piece reflected Alexandra's creativity and Jack's strategic insight. Together, they had created a line that merged innovation with sustainability, an embodiment of their shared values. Days before the international showcase in Milan, the unexpected happened. An invitation arrived for a private meeting with a top-tier global investor who could catapult Grayson and company into unprecedented success. Alexandra felt a thrill, but also a pang of anxiety. Jack, sensing her hesitation, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens, we face it together," he said. His confidence grounded her, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. In Milan, the showcase dazzled the fashion elite. The lights of the grand hall shimmered against crystal chandeliers, reflecting off the polished runway as models glided gracefully in Alexandra's creations. Cameras flashed, capturing every detail: the delicate embroidery, the interplay of textures, the bold yet refined silhouettes. Applause erupted after each sequence, growing louder with every piece. Jack watched from backstage, eyes unwavering, pride radiating from him as Alexandra took her pose. Backstage, amidst the organized chaos, Jack found Alexandra catching her breath, cheeks flushed, hands trembling slightly from excitement. "You did it," he said softly, taking her hand. "We did it," she corrected, meeting his eyes. In that simple exchange, the trials, doubts, and late nights dissolved. They had created something extraordinary, not just in fashion, but in partnership. Yet, it was in the quiet moments afterward that their victory truly sank in. They walked along the streets of Milan, away from cameras and flashing lights, the city alive around them. Jack took her hand, intertwining their fingers naturally. All of this," he said, "it's more than fashion. It's us." Alexandra smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "It always has been. And now, it's just the beginning." Returning to London, they found the studio transformed. Orders were pouring in from Asia, Europe, and the United States. Press coverage hailed them as pioneers in sustainable fashion, and the British Fashion Awards trophy proudly displayed in their office was a testament to their journey. Despite the chaos, Alexandra and Jack carved out moments for themselves. Quiet lunches in Camden, early morning walks along the Thames, and occasional evenings spent sketching side by side, a shared ritual that reminded them why they had started this journey. Their personal lives mirrored their professional growth. Without fanfare, without the need for validation, they grew closer. Alexandra no longer feared vulnerability. Jack no longer held back his emotions. They had faced external threats, internal doubts, and lingering shadows from past relationships, yet their bond had emerged unshakable. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of fittings and meetings, Alexandra sat in the atelier, sketching a new coat inspired by the London rain, a nod to the night that had changed everything. Jack entered, carrying a tray of tea and pastries, hair tousled from an impromptu jog across town. "I thought you might need a break," he said, setting the tray down. She looked up, eyes lighting up with relief and affection. "Perfect timing," she replied, leaning back to sip her tea. They talked long into the night, dreams and plans flowing as freely as the coffee. A Paris branch expansion, a children's fashion line, and even a collaboration with sustainable artisans worldwide. Each idea sparked excitement, not pressure, because they knew they were in it together. Laughter punctuated their discussions, playful debates over colors and cuts, and the occasional heated argument always ended with a reassuring touch or shared smile. Months passed. Grayson and Company had become a global name, synonymous with elegance, innovation, and sustainability. Alexandra, once a new designer from Manchester, now stood as creative director. Her influence felt across every decision. Jack remained CEO, strategic yet approachable, their dynamic a model of partnership in both business and life. They had built more than a fashion empire. They had created a life together. One crisp Sunday morning, Alexandra awoke in Jack's penthouse, sunlight spilling across the room. The familiar comfort of his oversized gray sweater draped across her shoulders, a reminder of their first chaotic, rain-soaked night together. Jack stirred beside her, eyes meeting hers with warmth. "Good morning," he murmured, voice low and intimate. Alexandra smiled, stretching slightly. "Good morning. Did you dream about fabrics again?" she teased. Jack laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Maybe, but right now, I'm focused on you. They shared a slow, unhurried breakfast, croissants and coffee in hand, content in the quiet domesticity of the moment. No grand gestures, no crowds, just the simple intimacy that had grown alongside their empire. Alexandra looked at Jack, her heart full. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Jack pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Thank you for trusting me, for believing in us." The journey that began with ambition, risk, and uncertainty had led them here, united in love and vision, ready to face the next challenge, confident in the knowledge that together they could weather anything. Alexandra and Jack knew that fashion would continue to test them, rivals would continue to emerge, and challenges would never cease. But one truth remained undeniable: they had each other. And with that, the world, and all its possibilities, felt infinite. As sunlight glinted off the London skyline, Alexandra and Jack stood side by side at the atelier window, hands entwined, hearts aligned. Tomorrow would bring new sketches, new designs, and new adventures. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment to savor triumph, love, and the quiet power of unity. The next chapter was unwritten, but together, they would craft it, stitch by stitch, heartbeat by heartbeat. Thank you for listening to the story. Write your thoughts in the comments.